Hello, everybody. This is Gynarchy Awakening. I am happy to join the rest of you again for another video. This one has to do with Gynarchy and how it's usually constructed and expressed. And after I ask the question, I'll explain a little bit of background on where the topic of the video came from. So the question is, how do you establish a context for Gynarchy outside of the fetishistic one? The reason for this question is because most of the time, the way matriarchies and gynarchies are either constructed or written, a lot of the time by men. They are fetishistic, but what exactly are about these gynarchies is fetishistic, and the reason why is because of how male-centric they are. In other words, everything that they are writing about has to do with how women are using power to subjugate men. In other words, it relates back to what they're finding sexually erotic. So when men are engaging in that body language or whatever in their home towards their wife, it's erotic. It turns them on, makes them feel good. And you might be thinking, well, hey, is it possible to establish it outside of that? Well, it can be difficult because gynocentrism and how gynarchies are depicted, it's almost as if when men and other people are writing these gynarchies, I have very seldom ever seen an actual gynocentric focus. In other words, women using the power and the control for their own benefit, not just to subjugate the men. And that seems to be a lot of the focus. So when they talk about like rapists getting life sentences, yeah, that's great. But it's once again about the woman using the power of that institution to either punish the man or put the man in his place. And I feel like it is this idea of the woman using that power in whatever way she does to do that. And in this sense, it's male-centric because it's not necessarily about women having power to better everybody, as people purport, but it's actually about how this power, when used by women, how that stimulates erotic thoughts from men and other fetishists who write about it. Because again, if you look at this logically, why would women, aside from self-interest and in some instances, why would they want to write a story where everything is about like men, like carrying women around? Like I think they have these weird carts where the men are pulling the women along while they're sitting in the back. You have all these different kinds of, you have like women bringing out whips or holding guns while men are doing like forced labor and other stuff. Again, all of this is like how women are depicted. You have the standard where women are walking men around on leashes, they're naked, whatever. But all this is about what turns the men on. And this is all fetishistic stuff. This is all stuff that is derived from a fetishistic viewpoint and lens. And so I remember a conversation. I think her name was Confessa. I think that was her name. It's been such a long time. A very intelligent woman who wanted to come up with a new lexicon because she felt that the current lexicon, like gynarchy and subjects like that, were I don't want to misrepresent her views, but if I remember it correctly, she didn't like it because of how sexualized not only the content was, but the language was, and she felt like there was no way to establish a new context for gynarchy outside of the fetishistic one, that the language itself was forever poisoned or toxic, and that she felt that she had to create a new lexicon, which isn't a bad idea, as long as you have a very good inner circle that you can trust not to leak that information. Then I think I think that would work really well. I am not going to take anything away from that philosophy. I think under certain conditions it can be compromised, but at the same time, I see its value. I understand where it's coming from. I think a lot of the time as well, when we do have these discussions, you have to kind of wonder. I've read the matriarchal stuff from Japan lately. I've seen two of them. One of them is a manga. I've read part of it, and the other one is an anime. But there's something interesting that's missing from both of these works, as well as the fetishistic Gynarchies, which is it's the focus being on women. In other words, men being in the background. In other words, it's about women and girls. It's about their health, their needs, and key word right here is health. So I can't blame women like Confessa for being like, you know what, fuck you to this fetishistic Gynarchy stuff when it just caters so much to what men want. And while I can personally see it as an entry level material, it should by no means be considered gynocentric. In other words, what I'm saying is a lot of fetishistic gynarchic stuff is explicitly male centric because it's all centered around what pleasures the man. What will benefit the man who wants to be subjugated, wants to be controlled. In other words, he just sees the woman as the means by which to get off, so to speak. And this is obviously something that would make one wonder, well, with all of this material, with all of this going on, how do you establish a context for Gynarchy out of it? How do you make something? And I think I'm going to give you a few ideas to start with. First, and this is something I might do in the future as a manga, I think that where you can begin is by creating either a manga or a story about what you would consider a non-fetishized gynarchic society. In other words, a society that actually is gynocentric. In other words, this society would be about providing economic support for women, support for their mental health, their well-being. In other words, everything about the power that they have is designed to not only consolidate that power within their own gender, but to ensure that it serves their interests, that they are the priority in that society. So let me give you some ideas of what I'm talking about. So this is kind of like, I brainstormed this last night at about 2 o'clock in the morning because I wanted to share that information. And I also wanted to make an observation afterwards based on what I had written. There is maternity leave. And I wrote within parentheses, so let's say you have this gynarchic society, right? And this one is properly gynocentric. So you have maternity leave. The government can compensate the company for the money it pays to the woman for the hours she's spending at home. So in other words, you get the government involved to supply the government, to supply that corporation or company or whatever for the money that they're doling out to the worker. So in other words, there's some kind of competition so that the corporation can't just complain or be like, oh, man, we're losing labor here, because they're selfish. And then the government could have a program to supply a temporary worker for the job, where the woman can pick out the candidate in advance by way of interviews. So she takes a look at the candidates. She sees which person, based on their qualifications and their prior experience, would be best to cover her job temporarily while she is busy taking time off in order to deal with late-term pregnancy. So that this is kind of where you differ from the fetishistic stuff. This is just about women's needs, focusing on doing things to advance their health, so on. So getting back to a government program that supplies funding for all the money needed to feed a baby during the most hunger early stages of development. This has to do with a conversation I had with a friend of mine who recently, his wife gave birth to his first child, which is a son. And babies, of course, need to eat a lot during the first I think, year or 2 years of their development. And if you're wondering why I'm tentatively saying that, it's because I was not, my education growing up as a male in this society was very poor. So this kind of programming is designed to alleviate the economic burden of having a child. So instead of you going out and buying all the baby's food, the government is supplying you with the money so that you can you aren't set back economically. And there also is something I would refer to as gynocentric jobs. In other words, a gynocentric economy, an economy in which there are jobs that are designed specifically to alleviate the burden on women or to benefit women and girls. So this could be either a government job or a private sector job that involves a woman or girl feeding a baby night or during the day. I asked my friend who had a baby if there was any kind of like company like that or job like that, and as far as to his knowledge, one does not exist. And so that would be something that would benefit obviously both parties, but especially the women and the girls who, especially if they're dealing with certain health issues, they need time to rest, to recover, to get some sleep. So this could be one way to achieve that. Again, think about the woman's health, because I heard the stories from my friend about how they had to constantly keep feeding the baby. The baby was yelling and screaming, waking up in the middle of the night over and over again. If a woman is already suffering from health issues and problems, this kind of job would alleviate a lot of that stress and allow them to have a good night's sleep. Especially, and this is, obviously there might be some family be willing to pitch in and support, like a grandmother and so on, but not everybody has a grandmother. Not everybody has gynocentric family that cares about the woman or the girl. So this is something that could compensate for that. And here is something else, a girl and woman's health class for boys in middle school or high school, educating them on the greatest health problems facing women and girls, the problems they face during pregnancy, childbirth, and the support they need. The reason for this is because when I was in high school, our health class did not cover anything significant related to the health of women and girls, the problems they face during pregnancy and childbirth, and the kind of support that they're going to need during that process. So again, forcing boys to take this class makes them educated on the subject so that they are not ignorant to it and finding out about it when a doctor sits in front of them. Because there is a difference between learning about something and being mandated to learn about something versus a doctor telling you when you've got a 9 to 5, when you've got other priorities. Some men will just, it's like a duck, like water off a duck's back. They'll just forget about it or pay attention to little details, but not really absorb the information. Take it to heart, and that's why you need a girl and woman's health class. Also, in addition, the men have to pass a test on a woman's health every 3 years until death. If they don't pass, they face financial penalties, and the failure of a test will be grounds for employers to offer higher paying jobs. I apologize. The test will be grounds for employers who offer higher paying jobs to toss out their job application. In fact, you could even have it to where if somebody has like a C or less or whatever, it's grounds to toss out the application. So in other words, there's an incentive to perform well on the test, to educate yourself well, so that you can have access to higher paying jobs in that society. So in other words, in this society, it's not necessarily that they won't let men work. It's that in order for the men to achieve it, they need to prove that they have the information and the knowledge to provide the support that the women and the girls need. Okay, I'm going to see you in part 2. I can't believe there's a part 2 for this, but there you go.